I'm Greg Tepper. That's Greg Powers. And this is This Week
in Recruiting.
It's This Week in Recruiting with Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPowerScout. Follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at Next Level D1. See his fine work at TexasFootball.com/recruiting. And of course, this is brought to you by our good chicken friends at Chicken Express. Chicken Express, Greg Powers approved.
Definitely love that Chicken Express.
Love that Chicken Express.
You got it DoorDashed yesterday.
I did get DoorDashed.
That's a flex right there. To the office.
I got it delivered. Okay, to be clear, I am lazy, but my car was in the shop. And
yes,
so
he did not have a vehicle. I'll give you that.
I didn't have a vehicle, so I had to have it delivered to me. Let me tell you, though, Chicken Express delivered.
Slaps.
It's a lot. Okay. All right. Let's start This Week in Recruiting. A lot to get to. We're going to start with our prospect on the rise. Our prospect on the rise is Duncanville 2022 defensive end Omari Abor. We've kind of talked around Omari Abor a lot on this program. There's no avoiding him now because he is an official Dave Campbell's Texas football 5-star prospect in the class of 2022, the fourth prospect to get it, joining Quinn Ewers, South Lake Carroll quarterback, Galena Park North Shore cornerback, Denver Harris, and Summer Creek offensive tackle, Kelvin Banks. He's our number 3 prospect in the state. He's the number 1 defensive end. This guy is a super stud. Powers, what is it about him that put him over the top to go from elite to super elite?
Well, I mean, he climbed up one spot in the state rankings. He was already in the top 5, so we pretty much had a good idea that he would be a 5-star prospect by the time it was all said and done. At the end of the day, the top 5 will all be 5 stars, and we'll continue to evaluate for that 5th and final spot. I like to name that 5th guy like around the first week of December, where you can take in the whole season and really look and evaluate which guys made some really strong improvements throughout the course of their senior season. But there's no sense in waiting on a guy like Abor. I mean, 6'4", 245 pounds. He's a strong side defensive end, but he's also a guy who could really get after the quarterback, so he can slide around and do some different things. He's continuing to add some good size, making him even more versatile, and he just brings a little bit of everything to the table. But what I really like about his game tape, he plays with a chip on his shoulder. You know, he's a guy that is relentless in pursuit of the football and really gets after it play after play. And all the top schools in the country are coming after him. I mean, he took a June official visits to LSU, Ohio State, and Alabama. He's also considering schools like Texas, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. And this is the perfect segue. Was there some news in college football this week about the SEC? Well, Omari
might have been
Abor
something.
Abor now has plans to take an unofficial visit to Texas this weekend. He's admittedly said that OU was like his childhood favorite growing up. They're now going to the SEC, and it really just opens the door, I guess, maybe for a bigger conversation here, Tepper, that you may want to talk about.
Well, yeah, let me ask you about that. And because the next guy we're going to talk about is a recent Texas A&M commit, so it's kind of on the topic. Here is my positioning statement. There's a lot of people who are saying that Texas going from the Big 12 to the SEC is going to severely impact Texas A&M's recruiting. This is where I'm at on it. I think that's way overstated. I think that A&M has the strength of the program, where they are right now. There's no reason to think that Texas coming into the SEC is suddenly going to mean that they don't recruit at a great level. Am I crazy? Do you share with that? I'm not saying there's nothing to it. I'm saying the idea that suddenly Texas joins the SEC and A&M's going to crater, I just don't necessarily buy that.
No, I mean, does Texas or Texas A&M ever really have a problem landing top recruits? You know, that's the question. I mean, I think that you have to recruit differently based on your in-conference competition, the type of schools that you're going to be playing. I would say the main thing that Oklahoma and Texas have to look at as they transition into the SEC in 2025, though there's plenty of time, is in the trenches, right? I think that's something that schools like Alabama and LSU in particular Georgia, do a great job of, is getting these big, speedy offensive linemen, powerful guys at defensive on the defensive front and depth. Depth at those positions makes all the difference. When one of the top guys on Alabama's offensive line goes down, they just plug in another 5-star behind him to pick up the slack. And to compete with those guys, you have to do that. And we've seen Texas A&M in recent years add that depth and talent to me on both fronts. As I look at their last few recruiting classes, that's the thing that jumps out to me are the type of players that they've been adding up front. And Texas and Oklahoma are going to have to match that, not only to hang with Alabama, LSU, Georgia. They're going to have to do that to hang with Texas A&M.
Let's now move on, speaking of Texas A&M, to our commit of the week. Our commit of the week is 2022 Argyle defensive tackle Jadon Scarlett, who has committed to Texas A&M. He had offers from Mizzou and Oklahoma, also ostensibly SEC schools. This is going to take a minute for me to get used to. He is the number 57 prospect on our DCTF Hot 100. He's a guy who transferred recently. He played last year at Flower Mound Coram Deo, a relatively small private school. He's transferring to let's just say a pretty prominent school in Argyle, and now he is committed to Texas A&M. This feels like another in a long line of really impressive defensive line commits for the Aggies.
Yeah, I really like the pickup of Jadon Scarlett because he's a guy who's tremendously athletic up front. He wraps up a lot of tackles. And one of the things that really jumped out to me as we were doing prospect evaluations and watching guys through the pandemic when we weren't able to see them in person was I think he had like a 55-inch box jump. That's really impressive for a guy that's weighing in at 265, 270 pounds, and he closes on the ball carriers extremely well. He did play private school competition the last couple of seasons, so I'll be interested to see how he transitions to playing for a school like Argyle, but I don't think you're going to see Scarlett miss a beat. This is a guy who flat out gets after it every single play. He plays with a high energy. He's a guy who loves to make big plays behind the line of scrimmage and basically flex up front, and that's what I think that he'll be able to do once he transitions. Another one of these versatile guys, I think that he can slide around and play some multiple positions, non-traditional defensive tackle in a sense, playing on the edge. He's a strong side defensive end that can get after and not lose any speed or lose a step as he chases after ball carriers or holds the line of scrimmage.
That's one of the things that I think is interesting. We mentioned that he transferred from Flower Mound Coram Deo. This is a relatively newish program in DFW. It's a smaller private school. It's TAPS Division II. And that's not to say that there aren't great players in TAPS Division II. Austin Regents is a TAPS Division II team. Austin St. Michael's. I mean, there's plenty of really good programs there. Dallas Christian, and they've put out their fair share of big-time playmakers. But I do think it's interesting that, I think it's fair to say that moving from there to 4A, he is going to get more consistent competition than he did there. Not necessarily better at the top end, but certainly more consistent competition week in and week out. And I think that you and I have had long conversations about private schools and recruiting on that regard. I'm very interested to see this transition. I'm very interested to see him go from what is, let's be honest, an off the beaten path private school to a state champion, a state title contender, once again, the number one team in 4A. I'm interested to see how that adjusts and what his film looks like after that, because his film on playing Coram Deo is super impressive, probably not surprisingly so.
Right, and he's going to get a chance to go up against college-level type of offensive linemen. Now, that's the thing that I think when you're watching the Coram Deo tape, you're not seeing him have those matchups with 250 to 300 pounders quite that often. And just looking at Argyle's 2019 schedule, they played Waco La Vega twice. They played Texarkana Pleasant Grove. They played Paris. They played Stephenville. So they're playing some guys that are going to bring some legitimate college-ready, college-level type of offensive linemen, and that's going to test him a little bit more than I think that he would have faced at Flower Mound Coram Deo. That's just my opinion as well.
We're talking This Week in Recruiting with Greg Powers, a next-level athlete here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation at #TF Today. Let's go to our underclassman of the week. Our underclassman of the week is 2023 wide receiver Ashton Cozart. He's one of the state's hottest prospects right now. He is playing at Flower Mound Marcus. He transferred to Richland from the state of Washington. Then he's now transferring to Flower Mount Marcus. I believe did we see him? Was he out there at 7-on-7? He was, yeah.
He was, and we recently spoke to him he was one of our featured prospects as a DCTF interview here as well, kind of announcing the news that he was going to Flower Mount Marcus.
And so this is a guy who has really heated up recruiting-wise. He has 23 offers. The most recent ones would be Oklahoma and Alabama. Those are pretty good schools. Ashton Cozart, a 4-star in the 2023 ranks, is a guy who certainly, if you don't know his name now, you're going to want to know it immediately.
I don't think it's really fair for me to say I think that Ashton Cozart is going to be like a breakout star in Texas high school football in 2021 because he has all these offers now, right? He didn't have a chance to put up huge numbers last year at Richland, but I think his connection with 2024 quarterback Cole Welliver at Flower Mound Marcus is going to play huge dividends there for both of those guys. You know, Welliver now has a bona fide guy that has 23 offers with schools like Alabama, Oklahoma, TCU, Texas A&M to throw the football to, in addition to Ricky Dudley's son, Dallas Dudley, who's already, a bona fide go-to type of guy in that offense. Going to have the benefit of what many are calling the next big thing at quarterback, throwing him the football. So I think this is going to be a perfect 1-2 punch right there at Flower Mound Marcus. And Ashton Cozart, really, I mean, all the top schools are now coming after him. 6'3", 180 pounds, silky smooth in his route running, has good hands, and he kind of plays something that I really like in the wide receiver position, confidence. He plays with confidence, and he brings it every single snap. So Cozart's one of those guys. As far as Texas high school football is concerned, I'm looking for him to have a breakout and be one of those guys who everybody talks about. But on the recruiting trail, he's already broke out.
Most certainly a guy in Ashton Cozart that you're going to hear his name a lot. Finally, let's round it all out with our Recruit of the Week. Our Recruit of the Week, we've been talking commitments. Let's talk decommitments. 2022 Port Arthur Memorial cornerback Jalen Gilbo has decommitted from Texas. He put out a statement saying that he wants to open up his recruitment. There are tea leaves that suggest that TCU is on the right path here for Jalen Gilbo, and I mean, when has TCU ever put out a quality defensive back?
Well, the thing to think about here is just watching this recruitment play out. We say time and time again, watch what they do, don't necessarily listen to what they say. Well, what Jalen Gilbo did is he took an official visit to TCU while he was committed to Texas. He took his official visit to Texas, and then he took his official visit to TCU, and that's when you start to really think, is this thing going to last? Does Texas feel comfortable with him taking, at that time, a visit to a conference rival, an in-state conference rival, no less? Is this thing starting to be something that we should more closely monitor? And it was something that we should closely monitor. And now I feel like TCU's in a pretty good spot to land a commitment from Guilbeau, but he has no shortage of options. I mean, if he takes some time and looks around, then this thing could certainly swivel or pivot in favor of some other schools. He has offers from Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, LSU. Have you heard of those schools? Oregon, USC, and many more. So TCU's in a good spot here, I think, and looks good to get a commitment from Jalen Gilbo. But if he does have 3 more official visits that he could take, and will some of these top schools get him on campus? I'm pretty interested to see if A&M gets involved here. Mm-hmm. That would be one to keep an eye on.
He is Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete, coming to us live via satellite. That's how I'm going to refer to, via satellite.
I like that.
That feels very like old school and like, very official. He's our recruiting analyst.
It also feels commanding.
Yeah, via satellite. I have a satellite. He is Greg Powers, Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPowerScout. Follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter, Next Level D1. See his fine work at TexasFootball.com/recruiting. Powers, appreciate your time. Maybe next week you can be sitting in this chair next to me. I miss you.
Well, little update for this week in recruiting. Next week, Powers goes to vacation, so maybe the week after.
Oh, ripping our hearts out.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.